With the name on drugs and poison apropos COVID-19. I have this notion that whenever you attend a lecture, you have to learn something. So I put apropos there so that everybody will check it, what it means deliberately. I start by giving thanks to Allah, the creator of the world, the merciful, the hereafter, and the merciful and beneficent, the hereafter, and the merciful here to everybody. May Allah's peace and blessing be bestowed upon the Prophet, the son of Abdullah, and all those who follow his footsteps to the last. Vice Chancellor, sir, Deputy Vice Chancellor, members of the Council and top management of Kudus, members of Kudus Board, deans of faculties, heads of department, distinguished professors and scholars, staff and students of Kudus, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is with pleasure and a pleasant sense that I present to you this lecture. Now, this slide, go back please. I'll give you a hands-on about what you do. This slide is showing essentially the summary of the lecture. You have here, you have so many types of drugs. You have obviously poison, and you have COVID-19. Essentially, we're going to be talking about drugs and how they become poisons and relate it to COVID-19, and that is what the apropos means. Well, it has been stated that perhaps one of the first duties of physician is to educate the masses not to take medicines. I hope at the end of the day, a lot of you will not want to take medicines. And that is a good reason. Inaugural lectures usually will follow one of three ways. Either you concentrate on the departments where the professor is chair, you center on topics which the professor considers that he has something fresh and stimulating, or you focus on the professor's work in the general framework of his discipline. So it pleases the Lord. Now, a brief comment about the slides. Is PowerPoint to the colored items, meaning that if you were just to focus and read the colored item through, it's designed to make sense to you and to have a complete information there. The in-between items are prompts that gives clearer information. Now, I focus on the world of drugs and poisons since 1998 when I get into pharmacology. And further microfocus in 2020 when COVID-19 came. This is because of certain events we have been doing, and it became very clear that we need to get into it. And then I got into many committees and then got grants, and therefore allowed me to put together all the events that have been happening to the department to focus on this. And therefore the inaugural lecture is made up for me, that I need to cover all those 3 points that usually inaugural lectures cover. Now, what are drugs, what are poisons, and what are medicines? Now, this classical definition, which you will see in some in popular books, is that drugs can be defined as chemical structure of substance of no structure, other than nutrients or essential dietary layer, which when administered to a living organism produce biological effect. We need to recognize quickly that vaccines are also drugs. Medicine, on the other hand, are unique chemical structure, emphasize unique, and intended to prevent ameliorate abnormal body function diagnosis. Now, intended here is not merely an emotional intention. It means that there's sufficient evidence for that intent. And then that is when they become medicines. Now, these are two medicines, for example, amoxicillin and ampicillin. Now, only a slight difference between them, just a hydroxide. And they become different drugs because of that, with different distribution. So that is why it's a unique chemical entity. You change something, it changes. It's no more the same drug. Poisons, on the other hand, are using chemical entities that they introduce deleterious abnormalities in body function. Intention is not needed for a drug to be a poison. Whereas to be medicine, intention is needed, meaning there's evidence. Therefore, the adage is that all drugs are poison, all medicines are drugs, but not all drugs are medicines. Repeat it, look at it, and look at it carefully. It makes a lot of sense. Now, the job of pharmacology, therefore, is this. Preserve what chemicals are available into. Are they drugs, are they poisons, are they medicines? The overall cultures and thorough nature of our work often involve apparently unnecessary stringency in allocating these categories. It is very frustrating a lot of time when claims of discoveries or cures to a disease and we just said insufficient evidence. Why do we do that? The initial standpoint you need to be coming from is that the body has a tremendous ability to heal itself. Usually, most of the time, it doesn't need you to go and touch it and cause a lot of problems. And the body's ability to combat disease, you can't match it. The body deals with, for example, 85% of sarcoma-19. It clears without detecting anybody knowing you had it. And we also have almost 12 viruses in our body at any time. And all these are kept in check by the tremendous body defense. But even when events ensue, the body does not go to rest and has not given up. It's still fighting. So whatever intervention you give, it is the body itself that finally completes the job of healing. It's not the intervention. The second thing you need to realize is that drugs almost always cause some harm. For example, paracetamol will attempt to deplete some important enzymes from your body anytime you take it. The enzyme self-clears, it clears it and self-heals. So if you take too much paracetamol, it will damage your liver. It is in fact the commonest cause of acute liver failure in the UK and US. Meanwhile, paracetamol is so heavily taken in Nigeria that some people even use it to cook food. Because they found out that when you put paracetamol into some meat, it becomes very soft and sweet. So be careful when you see them in restaurants like that. It was so rampant that NAFDAC had to give out a warning that such activity could lead to liver and kidney damage. So as regards the so-called natural herbs and medicine, that's another problem that is very misleading. When they say natural, it suggests that they lack toxicity. It is not true. When you use something as medicine, you are going to have regularity in the intake more than when you use it as food. You may take it 3 times a day, 4 times a day. In this context, you now have a consistent different changes in your body. For example, if you continuously take rice, beans, pounded yam every day, 2 times a day, you begin to have bamboos. Your breast begins to get big. And these are supposed to be natural diets. This is because they have a lot of administration. Yes, food can be drugs. So how do we resolve this dilemma where pharmacology see everything as poisons? Well, Paracelsus gave us a hint. All drinks are poisons. And nothing is without poison. He said the dosage is what matters. That the thing is not poison. So if you want to keep it simple, he said the dose-based poison. So the job of pharmacology, therefore, is determining that dose of a substance that is not poison. So this gives us an escape. Otherwise, we need to get afraid whether everything we take is poison. So when confronted with a chemical, the focus therefore is not to determine whether it is harmful, because it's always harmful. We know that already. Instead, we want to profile and quantify this harm and so that we can do a deliberate decision whether to take it or not. How do we do this? Now, drugs as poison can cause a legion of body harms. They are almost impossible to identify all of them. But we have some common, highly consequential harms they do, and those are what we check in standard evaluation of a drug candidate. For example, all drugs can cause death. So we check any potential drug for its ability to kill half a population of a studied animal, definitely not human being. We call that the median lethal dose or acute toxicity, and we call the answer we get from there as LD50. Now, for what you know as poison commonly, for example, hydrogen cyanide, the LD50 is very low, 3.7 milligram per kilogram body weight. But that of paracetamol is 1,944. Monosodium glutamate, your Maggi, is 60,600 milligrams. It's actually safer than paracetamol. It's actually safer than paracetamol. But your popular LF4 is 2,000 milligrams per kilogram body weight, which is close to paracetamol. So, you begin to see there are problems. A lot of things we think are natural. Now, what of sugarcane that everybody takes a lot? The LD50 is around 5,000 milligrams per kilogram body weight. So, if you compare it to your Maggi, you begin to get a lot of concern. Sugarcane has also been shown to have cytotoxic activity in some tumor cells, meaning that it kills some tumor cells. Those tumor cells look like normal body cells. We also know that all drugs can slowly damage the liver, the kidney. So we check all these things in another study we call subacute, chronic, and lifetime studies. We use different animals to do that, and we are checking the type of damage it does, the dose at which it does that, and the extent. All drugs can also cause respiratory depression. So we check what we call respiratory safety pharmacological assessment. Again, looking for type, extent, and dose. All drugs can affect your heart. So we also check cardiac safety. They can affect the CNS, like the brain area. And we also check CNS safety. They can affect the reproductive system and the growing fetus. So we check reproductive safety. They can break and damage the DNA. So we do what we call genotoxicity mutagenesis. This is not an exhaustive list, but the barest minimum of what we check before we allow people to take drugs. The final objective is not to reject it, but want to quantify the damage, understand the damage, so that we stay far away from the poisonous doses. Now, given that the body is highly capable of self-cure, as I said before, the potential for a drug to cause harm is almost always present, and the potential for benefit is not always guaranteed. That we begin to recognize why the declaration of a cure is often taken with a lot of caution.